And last but not least, man, before we kick off the episode proper, man, David Lynch, boy, passed away yesterday.
Yep. Yep.
Back in 2017, I believe it was, right? Yeah, 2017, right? We actually spent a good chunk of time in that particular episode, when we were doing it as BS Beats and Bailey, when we were doing the podcast, is that, yeah, where we were talking about David Lynch. Reason being is because he had dropped his third season and, well, technically final season of Twin Peaks, right? AKA Twin Peaks: The Return. And this is not coming. This isn't coming from a fan of the series, right? I watched it, and I appreciate it. I understand its place in pop culture and whatnot. I just felt like, because it only lasted 2 seasons, right? I just felt it just sort of ended on an abrupt note. I understand why it was cancelled, and then there was the prequel slash sequel movie Fire Walk with Me, which I didn't care for, honestly, even though I saw this movie twice. But the point is, right, when season 3 of that dropped on Showtime, I just did this whole deep dive, just basically talking about my history with Lynch and his films and
Yeah.
whatnot. Um, Also, there was a documentary which is now available through the Criterion Collection called David Lynch: The Art Life, where they was just touching on, yeah, just him as a painter, right? Because that's one thing you kind of tend to forget, but you kind of find out after the fact is like, yeah, he's not just a filmmaker, he's not just a screenwriter. He also, yeah, he paints and he just creates stuff. He has music. He put out a couple of albums in his career. He never just limit himself to one medium of creativity, right? And that's one takeaway that I will carry with me, from his life and his career, right? Never sticking to just one form of media, creativity, right? Because compared to people like, say, a Scorsese or a Spielberg, right? Both of which pay tribute to him, right? Yeah, his catalog is fairly small compared to them, Like, he doesn't have like a lot of films in his career, right? But I feel like it just has to do with the fact that he always wants to maintain creative control. Is always like, this is how I want to do it. If you don't like it, fine, right? So it's like that, right? And that's how something like, say, Mulholland Drive, came to be, right? Which currently is my pick for favorite top favorite Lynch movie, right? In the sense that was supposed to be a series, right? And when you really look at the film, if you haven't, it plays out like a TV series, like almost like you're watching like a 2 hour pilot fit, if you will, right? But because of how it was done and just structurally and tonally and all that kind of stuff, you just say, let me just put this out as a movie, right? And yeah, it's probably one of the best movies I've ever seen from him, right? But just to kind of wrap things up, right? But yeah, yeah, I found this out Wednesday afternoon. I just stepped out of my house just doing some work. I came back and Tracy, shout out to Tracy Hutchins. He messaged me and say, I just saw this online. I don't know how true it is. And I saw, wait, what? David Lynch dead? You know what I mean?
Right.
78, right? Now here's the thing, right? There was a report late last year where he said where he was diagnosed with emphysema,
Right.
and that's just from the literal decades of smoking, right? Because yeah, if it's one thing he's always known for, always have a cigarette, right, in the hand or in mouth, right? That's just him. So I just knew that that whole emphysema diagnosis was an end result of that, right? But I didn't think that, like, I just thought all he just had to do at this point on was just to slow down, take it easy, and he'd live some more years. But when the announcement came on like this, I was like, it just literally stopped me in my tracks, right? I did like a little quick memoriam of sorts. I took, well, the only 2 movies of his that I own on home media. That would be Eraserhead, which was the first film I bought on from Criterion on DVD, and Mulholland Drive itself, right, which I have on Blu-ray. I've just put those up and gave it like a quick little memoriam about it, right? Even though his works are and will remain divisive, there's
Yep.
no denying, Dread, how influential he was, right? Because nobody was making movies the way he did, right? Um, and like this, I was just thinking about it too, like just how something like Eraserhead will become is actually a thing, like a reality, right? Like if that movie came out now, we would think it's like the biggest piece of shit ever, right? We would think it's like like somebody like we will call it kind of amateur, like how he was talking about Megalopolis, parts of Megalopolis being amateurish, right? We would have said that about Eraserhead, like what's this movie, right?
Yeah, no,
But
yeah. That's the thing listen, if Megalopolis came out 40 years ago, I'm sure we would have been praising it.
I
I
know.
am
Yes,
sure.
I am.
I am
Yeah,
sure it would have been precedent. Like, I'm telling you this.
yeah,
And
yes.
not that can't come out now and for that bullshit to be there. Sorry.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
So it's just amazing that that movie in particular came out at the time it did, right? Because yeah, surrealist films were being made for years, right? Especially in
Right.
Europe, right? And there was the midnight movie scene that was growing, and
Right.
that movie becomes synonymous to that now, right? Um, but just the mere fact that he didn't just stay in that independent lane, right? After that, he did the Elephant Man and then Dune and all
Right.
that kind of stuff, right? But he still kind of stayed true to the dream logic vision when it comes to his
Yeah,
films, right?
he always that's what one thing great about him. He's one of those guys who when they say don't think about it, don't
Yeah,
try to think about it. At least not now. At least while you're watching it. He's one of those guys. He's one. I don't know. I don't want to say get away with it because he's one of those guys who has always been very like earnest in his like the kind of the melancholy and of tragedy mixed with surrealism. He does that really well. And everything is about like there's a lot of death in his movies, but like it's not played that way. And then he goes to also the conceit of like the idea of tragedy and how to navigate the world in tragedy. Like so, like his with Pong for Pong, his most popular work is Twin Peaks, right? Yeah, that whole thing was just about it started with a girl being murdered. That's the story.
yeah.
Uh,
Laura Palmer,
Laura
and
Palmer, right? Yeah, and
Fire Walk with Me would show, yeah, the week that led up to her really really brutal death. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. And so it's these conceits about how surrealism is in context with life, and he does this, and there's an earnestness with his material that works. Like you're not supposed to make sense of it because that's kind of part of it. Like it's this. There's a logic, but not the logic you think it is. That is by definition. Like that's really difficult to piece together. And he has always had a kind of humanistic earnestness to the material, and then how much influence that he has been on filmmaking and visuals. Like just with that alone, right? Every time you see a weird kind of room with a checker pattern and probably somebody who too short fit walking around, that is all Lynch, right? Or how many people, you know, pull from it. Like for me, my favorite Lynch reference is Soul Eater, right? Like if you get a reference, look up that. But yeah, so it's all of that, right? And he's one of these guys who just as just a really really fascinating, interesting filmmaker as it is. He's one of those guys who just references cinema and art, but does surrealism and the earnestness of surrealism in the conceit of, well, if you're subverting, you have to understand why it is we subverting at all. And that works well. Like he'll talk about the thing that you should be see as nice, and then he'll subvert that. Like take for example, like oh gosh, Mulholland Drive, which is the niceness of it, and then the earnestness of taking away innocent, but then the idea of appealing to that same innocence at the same time. Like you know what is being destroyed, but he's not cynical at all. He never felt cynical to me. With that aspect of it, and that's why I always liked him as a filmmaker. Like, I'm not like a big super fan or anything like that, but like he's somebody who's like, oh yeah, right. He always like tell the conceits in a very direct and obvious way, and you know what you're getting. But at the same time, he knows how to flip it in really interesting and intelligent ways. And that, yeah, I do consider him one of the greats in that sense. So yeah, but yeah, R.I.P. to a great. But yeah, last thing to say.
yeah, yeah. Well, and I just love as we're talking here right now. The rain has started falling, so it's adding like a ambience to what's being said here, right? But yeah, this dead really did hit me, right? And it's just I'm just grateful that this guy was just able to be alive to make the films how he made it, right? And not in in a pretentious way as we would have assumed, the first time we saw one of his films, right? But that's kind of understanding over time that no, there's a literal craft and an art that went into making each of his films, right? I just wish that he was just able to make more films during his lifetime, so he would have like a huge, like a bigger body of work, like say a Spielberg or a Scorsese, right? Speaking of Spielberg, I love the fact that even Spielberg, had to give David his flowers by having
Yeah,
him play John Ford at in the end of the Fablemans, and that was a
right,
great
right, right,
moment
right.
actually. Like I
Yeah,
forgot
yeah,
about
yeah,
that scene. Like I was like, what? Like yeah, David Lynch, what? This is
yeah.
great. Like I love this, right? But yeah, when it comes to just surrealism, just making surrealism, cool, right? That's what he did, right? It wasn't just limited to just like art cinemas, like say like a Buñuel or whatever. It was just like, here's
Right,
what
right, right.
I bring in surrealism to the mainstream. That this is why I did, right? But it wasn't just like that, just like a gimmicky kind of thing. It was just more about like, look, just about creativity in general. That's the idea of dreams and how they would. Because I mean, who hasn't had a dream that just played out from start to end, and then when you wake up from it, like suddenly whether the dream ends or not, you just stay like wondering, like, how did I even get here? Like, why I even dreamt this in the first place? But when you really think about it, there's aspects about that dream that kind of say a lot about you and who you are, and what appeals to you, or what keeps you up at night, right? That kind of logic. Now, that's what I love about his films, right? I will admit, just to wrap things up, there's still a couple of films I haven't seen from him. Still haven't seen The Elephant Man. Shame on me. I know. It was just one of those shows I was always meant to see, but I just never got the chance to. And the Straight Story, which our colleague CC, put as one of their favorite films of film discoveries, sorry, of last year. So those two shows I need to check out. Also mentioned to Lost Highway from '97. That's one I need to
Right,
check out as well. But I pretty much saw everything else. I saw Dune in
right.
preparation for Villeneuve's Dune, and I still don't care for that Dune film, but I understand why it's there and whatnot, and its place and whatnot. I do understand why fans of that film like you appreciate it, right? For me, if it wasn't for that film, we wouldn't have Blue Velvet, which yes is the let me just say is his magnum opus, is the show that
Right.
will forever define him as who he is, right? But yeah, I mean we've like at the end of the day, like there's so much to say and mention about him. But like I said, we talked about him back in 2017. So I will include in this section here, I will include just a link where you could check out that full episode where we talked about Twin Peaks. We talked about his filmography, sorry, and we talked about The Art Life, right, which is a great doc. You should actually check it out. It's on the Criterion Collection and it's on the Criterion Channel right now, right? But yeah, a true legend, passed away, man. A true auteur. Like if you like if there's one person who defines the term auteur, it's really him, man. And I don't know. That's just for me. Just as to wrap things up, though, is just I wish that he was just able to put out at least a couple more films, man, before he bowed out. But that didn't play out, unfortunately, right? So that's that. But yeah, R.I.P. to David Lynch, man. I don't know if you have any last thing you had to say
No,
before
not
we move
really.
on.
I mean, I kind of say my piece here. Yeah, he again is just how what he represents in film and the idea of counter narrative and counter conceits. Um, I think he's one of the few that really actually pulled this off. In a meaningful sense, he never felt pretentious or anything like that. In my humble opinion. So yeah, that's it.
All right. Well, the last question, just out of curiosity, what is your current favorite film from him?
I'll say now. Probably Blue Velvet. Like I'll say, pound for pound, probably Blue Velvet or Mulholland Drive. That is a trop, but I'll say probably Blue Velvet will take the edge, in my humble opinion.
Right. Well, for me, that's my second favorite, followed by Eraserhead, because yeah, Eraserhead just came at me at the right time, like when I was learning about what a cult film was, what a
Right.
midnight movie was, and all that kind of stuff. And I'll close this, right? You could see the influence of that film, but not so much that film, but just the idea of consuming those films at not exactly midnight, but
Yeah.
by yourself late night, right? With I saw the TV glow, like I could see that
Right.
as
Right. Right.
like it carrying on the tradition of what Lynch did with Eraserhead and a few of his other more artistic films, right? I could see that sort of trajectory there, if you will. But yeah, again, not much more we could say again, man. But RIP to a true legend here in the
Yeah.
form of David Lynch.